it all sort of worked out for them. Again, you had guys, their fourth line guys were real good. Like I mentioned, Carcillo, he had that great goal against the Flyers where he's like, he's got his arms raised in front of the crowd there, and the guy's giving him the finger in Philly, and
Yep.
so I think during the season itself, I don't think anyone really saw that coming. And then they just sort of caught fire in the playoffs, which that's what happens. That's what makes the Stanley Cup playoffs so great. Any team, whether it's a hot goaltender, emotion, which was sort of the case here with, again, the St. Louis mother passing away, and it just went on from there. So just a great season that, again, sort of came out of nowhere, because if you looked at where they were going into, coming out of December and into January, they really weren't a great team. They were underachieving, looking at their roster. But again, they caught fire, and look, the Stanley Cup Finals were, they lost 4-1, but they easily could have won that series 4-1 with all the overtime games, and they just couldn't catch a break at the non-goalie interference call, and everything that went on. I don't need to replay all that for everybody. Everybody's ready to kill themselves as it is. They've been stuck in the house. I don't need to hear this, but but yeah, just a great year, sort of coming out of nowhere again. Similar to the Blues. I mean, their Rangers weren't in last place or anything like the Blues were last year, but no one expected them. And again, that's the parody of the NHL, and just sort of anything can happen in the NHL playoffs more than, to me, any other sport. The NHL playoffs are such a crapshoot, more than any other playoff. Even, with the NFL, it's a one game, obviously, elimination, but I still think the NHL, any team can win. Any team can get, it could be the 8th seed. Look, when the Rangers, won the Cup in '94, the Canucks were an 8th seed. So any team can get through the playoffs and get to the finals and win. So it was a great year. It was a fun year. That was just a fun run. My blog was sort of at the peak at that point, so I just really remember it, and going to all the viewing parties at Hudson Station, and hanging out with the Weebly Blue guys, and all that fun stuff. So it's a good time, a fun time, and again, that those are the things you sort of remember, now that we're sort of quarantined here, and we don't have sports to go to and be part of our social life anymore. I remember where I was during those games, again, at the bar, at my buddy's house watching it, where, we're on the edge of our seats, and they score, and we're big hugging, and, those kind of things. So, that was a great year, and hopefully we're in line for another one of those in the next couple of years.
Yeah, if it ever comes back. I'm sorry, I'm being the negative guy, ain't I? I'm the negative guy. You're talking about the great memories, and I'm being like,
I know.
Yeah, it's not going to happen again. No, it's all over.
Goodness,
No.
you wanted a therapy session tonight, man. Come on, I'm not doing a good job of getting you in the right frame of mind.
I'm totally cool. I'm totally good. We're having a little fun here. That's what we do. Yeah, I mean, just looking back over here at the playoff rounds, beating the Flyers in the first round that year, and then obviously the amazing, man, down 3-1 to Pittsburgh, man. I know you were talking about that before with St. Louis and the goal and everything, but just the magic of that coming back, and then
what's crazy too about that playoff run is we didn't play the Capitals.
No,
I mean, we seem to play them every year, but the one year we actually got to the Cup, we didn't play them. I mean, we had such epic sort of series against them. Yeah, it seems like those are two teams you're sort of playing every year, but especially the Capitals. And actually, we didn't have to go through them, which is surprising, just considering. If you probably looked at, the playoff series, the year before, year after, 2 years after, 2 years before, whatever, they were probably playing them every year except for that one year. Interesting.
Yeah, and then the series against the Canadians, just Carey Price and Kreider, and what a wild series that was as well, too, when you think back about it. And, the Rangers, I mean, going 7 against the Flyers and going 7 against Pittsburgh, and then 6 against the Canadians, by the time, I have to look. I mean, I know the Kings went to war in the Western Conference. I mean, you had Chicago back then. You had Nashville. All those teams are still, I mean, I know they had to fight really hard to get to the finals, too. But when you look at the run the Rangers had to do, And like you were saying, they weren't really, expected or anticipated to kind of really have any kind of success. And they obviously have to work for it here. There's no doubt about it, and especially against Pittsburgh in that series as well. So when you get there and you get to the finals and all the emotions, and then you're playing, the Kings, and obviously you're throwing in the travel back and forth, and obviously the Kings had to do it too. And the Kings are just on another level. There was nothing you could do that year anyway. I mean, 2 years in a row there, and, they beat the Devils as well, too. So it is what it is. But when you look at the body of work and how they got there, going back from Torts and everything you were just saying and taking everybody back there and different players and the different acquisitions and the different moves, the different lines, just even Vigneault as a coach, too, and how that all worked out. And just to look back on it now and to see – how close they got, and with the big trade there with Callahan and St. Louis. And I love Marty St. Louis, and that was pure hockey magic, that whole thing with Pittsburgh and them coming back, and it was just absolutely incredible. And obviously we have all the highlights to go back and look at, and then you fast forward, a couple of years, obviously the 2 years after that, and things kind of get to that point where the letter comes out, and here we are, me and you talking again, too. And it was funny because I was going to ask you, and you brought it up, like, I was trying to think about, how involved you still were with your blog back at that time. And how long after that, Kevin, did you start pulling back from doing the blog? I mean, were you just emotionally drained, couldn't handle it anymore? I mean, when did that turn for you?
I'm trying to remember because I shut it down and brought it back like a couple of times. It may have been like the next year. I'm going to be honest, I don't even remember because I kept shutting it down and bringing it back. But
and why? Because like I'll tell you, like you knew me back then, and I was building my network back then, Hockey This Week and Hockey Active and all that other stuff. And I can tell you, like I had pushed my network to the max, and eventually I was, trying to make money doing it, and it just wasn't happening. And podcasts wasn't popular back then. Broadband, Wi-Fi, broadband. I was a little ahead of the times there, and people were looking at me like I had three heads and stuff. So for me, once I got to the point where I was on Yahoo Radio, and then I was sitting in front of investors and advertisers, and nobody would sign the check. Nobody would buy in. I got very close, and then I basically, for financial and for time reasons, I created this thing, and I had to stop. And obviously, it really bummed me out for a long time. I didn't even want to look at a microphone. I didn't want to, and I told you this, and so everybody knows too. Before I reached out to Kevin back in July, it's been a long time, and I had done that. I'd thrown that hockey show on a couple of times over the last couple of years, but there was just something like I just wasn't feeling it anymore. But the primary reason I shut everything down was because financially as a business, it was done. It was dead. And I had to walk away from it because it was just, I had tried. It was like 4 or 5 years. It was a labor of love. And I had to walk away from it, and that was it. And along that time, you were doing the blog. And so I was kind of curious what made you actually have to shut it down yourself. Because I know you put tons of time into that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was actually making some decent money with it through advertising and things like that. But, for me, it was just taking too much time away from my family, to be honest. I mean, I just found myself, I was either always on my computer or on my phone, like, because I was constantly either trying to update the blog or just looking for the latest piece of news that was sort of coming across. And I could just tell it was just putting a strain on, my family life, myself, my work life, that kind of, it was just taking over. And yeah, I was making money, but not enough where it was something that I could just, make a living off of. So, I just
paying for 12 packs and cases, right?
Well, exactly. But it was, to be honest, it just wasn't worth it. I mean, to be taking away time from my kids, my wife, my job, and
it's an 82 game season.
Yeah,
like I get it, man.
Yeah, no, it was game recaps. It was news all day. It was, I was up till 3, 4 in the morning, like almost every night, like scheduling posts for the next day. Like I would write 3 or 4 I would write the game recap, and then I would have a couple of extra articles that I would write. So I would have, 3 or 4 articles like in the hopper, scheduled to spread out through all the next day. So I was up till 3, and then I'd have to wake up, with the kids the next day. Like I was getting like 2 or 3 hours of sleep like every night.
And
And then
your columns were custom because you put a lot of media in there, a lot of GIFs, a lot of video clips. Like you
yeah, I
weren't,
was doing everything.
you weren't just sitting there going, "All right, I'm going to write 250 words on the game." You had to be creative. Your
Oh
blog,
yeah,
your pages were creative.
yeah. No, it was. I never felt as though. And look, so it's obviously personal preference on what somebody wants to either read or write. For me, I never want to read the real long articles where it's just too much for me. I just don't have time. I just want to, I want to see a couple of GIFs, a couple of videos, some funny things written, and that was it. So I was like, well, if that's what I like, that's what I'm going to actually put together. So that's what I would do. I would have all these posts, and a lot of them were very short. It was either just a video and some commentary on it or whatever it was. But there was a lot of it. I was like, oh, I think I should do a separate post for this and that for this fight. I'll do a separate post for the fight and this amazing play and then thoughts on this. And then, in the middle of the day, something will come out. So I'll quickly do something at work quick or, whatever it was. And I just was like, this is taking up my whole friggin' life. So, the problem is that you shut it down and for a month, you're like, thank God I don't do this. But after that month, you're like, I sort of miss it.
Well, that's another question for you because that's something that I dealt with too. Because when you love the game, and obviously you were doing one team, I was running almost 6 shows a week. And I had, I was working. I was lucky. I'd been working with Neil Smith. I was working with, Butch Goring and Dave Maloney, Ken Danico, Scotty Lachlan from NHL Network. I was working with all kinds. And then I had Kerry Frazier. Kerry Frazier was amazing. And I had all these shows, and I was working with my cousin Mike, who actually does the ILC podcast. He helped me a lot. My brother was helping me out back then. We had that Hockey This Week show, and we used to do a lot of on-location shows back then. And we loved it, and that was the, that's something in business you learn too, right, Katie? It's like there's the business side of it and the time that you're putting into it and how it's affecting the other people in your life and your hygiene and your own health in terms of sleep and everything else. And there's that line of, like I said, I hear you when you say you shut it down and then you miss it. And you miss it because you're a fan, and it's because it's something you love, whether it's music, whether it's art, whatever you kind of latch onto, and it's something that you get creative about, and it's something that you love to do. And at first, you really primarily, you're up till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. You're not doing it because you're getting paid. You're doing that because you want to do this. You love it, and you built up, obviously, you still have a great fan base. So then you felt, it's like me with the music. You have an audience. You have people who are expecting you to continue to give them content and give them that angle. So, that's the other thing, too. How is that one of the reasons that it kept pulling you back in?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I think like anything else, I mean, I think you sort of miss the interaction with, your fans or friends or whatever you want to, call it. And people are asking for your, take on this and that. And then you sort of miss giving it. You miss putting that content out there. And I enjoyed like you said, the sort of, pressure to sort of put out this great content. Like, can I live up to the expectation that people are looking for on this? Or I think people are going to love this video. I got to put it out, or, thoughts on this, or I bet you nobody realized that, try to find sort of an angle in there that maybe people aren't looking at, or a funny take on it that people aren't looking at, and that kind of thing. And, just beyond the content, I mean, I was running, I was doing the Sean Avery All-Star stuff to try to get him voted in. I did the Derek Bugard T-shirt
That was good stuff.
Fundraiser.
Yep.
I one year this was the craziest thing I ever did. I don't know why I ever did this. So I did a fantasy hockey league, right? So instead of just saying like I'll take like 10 guys and do like a league, I just opened it up to everybody. I was like, whoever wants to join. I'm telling you, Paulie, I think I had like 100 people join, right? So I had to set up like different leagues, right? So what I decided, instead of just saying like, okay, you're in this league, you're in this one, I decided instead of just giving like I went to the Rangers and they actually sent me all these prizes that I can give out to people. This is how nuts I was. And